evening. This is the Finance Committee meeting for August 15th, 2024. I'm opening up the meeting with a call to order and roll call. At this point in time, Vice Chair Anthony Maddox here. And member Jim Cash just walked in, and I'm Chairwoman Gail Larson. The first agenda item is the Racial Justice Task Force recommendation. I was expecting some people from the RJTF to be here, but if not, then I'll go ahead and present the information and work on next steps with them later. Council received that final report from the Racial Justice Task Force, and they received information that told us that they would like us to do some work. So I want to preface this discussion with the following recommendations that came out of the Racial Justice Task Force, which was in parenthesis to collaborate with other municipalities, pooling our economic strength to encourage banks to increase the amount and number of loans in African American communities. And then there are several recommendations, including retain an expert in Home Mortgage Disclosure Act data to analyze annually the lending done by banks and the banking services available in the city's African American neighborhoods. That's where I want to start. So I do want to start with some data that we got from the Fair Housing Center 2024 report. And it notes that despite the passage of the Fair Housing Act 56 years ago, housing discrimination and segregation remained prevalent in Northeast Ohio and most of the country. For the third consecutive year, the number of fair housing complaints filed in Northeast Ohio grew, increasing by 20.7% between 2022 and 2023. Segregation, redlining, and persistent forms of radicalized wealth inequality continue to contribute to financial health, education, and other counterparts. Socioeconomic disparities between people of color and their white counterparts in Northeast Ohio. Mr. Benjamin, please feel free to sit at the table.
Okay.
Gary Benjamin just arrived to represent the Racial Justice Task Force. I'm just reading that quote from the Fair Housing Act in the executive summary. The lasting financial, economic, socio-emotional, and health impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic have exacerbated these disparities and shaped housing outcomes in the region. Frank Ford, Senior Policy Advisor at the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, told Channel 19, March 26, 2021, quote, "We have a period of like 60 years of not making loans in Black communities, and we have the mid-90s to 2000s of making loans that were high risk and not good for those communities." Ford said it caused a tremendous amount of delinquency and foreclosures, which we all experienced in 2008. Particularly, the foreclosures led to abandonment and blight. Mr. Ford said it created lasting effects in Black neighborhoods. For those who managed to keep their home, many saw values diminish because the surrounding area deteriorated so much. That's a huge loss of wealth for that family, and in terms of the ability to pass that wealth on, that's a very tragic situation. I think it's really why we need to pay attention to this and why we need to be continuing to look at solutions to help those values come back in those predominantly African American communities. Ford offered a few solutions. He talked about ending predatory lending practices, which has been a key focus of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and so to some extent this really abusive activity fell off on its own, aided by federal government intervention. The second thing to correct this is to deal with thousands of blighted properties, some of which can be renovated and recovered. Mr. Ford said there also must be continued lending reforms, because in order to help these communities recover, it means people do need access to home repair loans. And we do need access for people to still be able to buy homes in these communities when they come for sale. I would be neglectful if I didn't introduce Acting Director Schuster, who is here for discussion later on in the meeting. So welcome to the table. Do I have any comments from the Finance Committee before we get any feedback from Gary Benjamin? Okay. I'm going to give you the floor and kind of a little bit of history as to how you got to your recommendation and then where you think we could go next.
So Frank Ford and Barbara Anderson and a small group of people have formed the Greater Cleveland Reinvestment Coalition. I don't know how long ago. I'm a newcomer. I've been on it 8 years. And they've been working on different ideas. And they found a ready ear in Cheryl Stevens at the county council, who works, as most of you know, as a executive director of East Akron Neighborhood CDC, which is a really big CDC, and they've done some things on this. And the idea is, how can we come up with strategies to break down redlining, at least in terms of loans? So 5 or 6 years ago, I guess, the county has a contract, and I'm assuming we do too. This is something the finance director can clue me in on, actually. But they have a bank services agreement that's entered into every 4 years with KeyBank. And when it came up last time, Frank and the coalition talked then Executive Budish into adding 13 points to the contract, the services contract, that would push money into low and middle income neighborhoods. And KeyBank agreed to those. Now, when the services contract came back up again, it's going to be signed sometime this year for another 4 years. Cheryl and GCRC pushed to get a subcommittee of the Committee and Economic Development Committee of the County Council together to create advice as to what the services contract should have in it. So we did that over the last 4 years. There were 4 people from Cleveland Heights on this group. Cheryl chaired it. Parnell Jones, who was president of council, was there once in a while. He was supporting us. I was on it. The mayor was on it, and Barbara Anderson, who's the leader of GCRC, and now one of our precinct leaders in Cleveland Heights, was on it. She's been a leader of GCRC for a long time. But other people of note were Mayor Wheeler, Center Representative. Mayor Blackwell was actively involved. Kevin Novak of Community Housing Network was there, and Sally Martin O'Toole, who was housing director in South Euclid and now in Cleveland, was on it. I'm missing a couple of people that I'm sure will be mad at me. But anyway, that was the group. We worked for 4 years, and our recommendation came out to be fairly simple, that we should continue asking KeyBank. I guess I should give one more piece of the pie here. KeyBank has probably the worst record in loaning to low and middle income neighborhoods of all the major banks in the country. It got so bad that the National Coalition for Reinvestment, the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, walked away from the table and said it's useless to try to bargain with them because they make promises and don't keep them. That seems to have self-corrected now, and they're back to the table. And as far as they're doing in Cleveland, the numbers weren't as bad as they were nationally, but they were still not good. You can speak to that later. So this is not an easy cultural change at KeyBank to get them to think as part of their business model that they would have to actually do things in poorer neighborhoods in order to get the big bucks. The big bucks being $900 million a year deposits for a 4-year period from the county. So that's $3.6 billion. And our advice was pretty straightforward. It was, we need to have measurable results in the contract. The last demands were kind of, not iffy, but they were hard to measure and they were hard to enforce. And that there should also be some sort of enforcement mechanism. And some of that is going to be developed with the administration. This executive, Chris Ronane's been on board with this pretty heavily, and he seems to like the idea. So during those meetings, the mayor here suggested that, maybe littler cities could do something similar with their banks, especially if we formed a group together. And that was one of the suggestions from the Racial Justice Task Force. Actually, I think it was before he suggested it at the county. At any rate, great minds think alike. So that's That's what I'm mainly here for. There were some other recommendations that I think are mostly in the housing committee.
Yeah.
So, but that's the big one here. So we need to know, I guess, is there a banking services contract? I understand our bank is US Bank, which, as Gail knows, I should say the chair knows, when we did our GCC work, we found they were the biggest foreclosing entity in the city by far. And they responded pretty well to our overtures. I mean, we kind of threatened them at one point with the Reinvestment Act thing, but and it was GCC doing it. So we also had something going on in Minneapolis or Milwaukee, I guess it was, simultaneously that we didn't know about, but there were two groups of the national faith-based organizing groups pushing the same bank at the same time for the same stuff. So that's why we're here. We'd like to see, I don't know what shape it'd take here. I think that's something I could put my mind to if you want some language, but the idea would be to get in the city here to do something similar and to reach out to other cities to do the same kind of thing. We're an $80 million or so dollar budget. The school board is what, 120? Thereabouts?
About 180 when you start adding everything in.
Yeah, so those two are a lot of money, especially over 4 years. That hits $1 billion.
I thought the city was bigger than 80, but
What could be? Well, my money person's over here, so.
She's the money person.
So, do we have a 4-year contract with US Bank for banking services?
I would have to look into that because
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Are you is the organization expecting to have input on the key bank, those entities that have key bank service contracts before the 4 years is up at the end of this year?
Well, we've suggested to county council, and Barbara's meeting with Parnell Jones, maybe it was yesterday, to follow up. One of our recommendations was to continue some form of that citizen oversight. Because the other thing we did was we evaluated Key Bank on whether they met their 13 goals. And we came up with sort of. It was hard to tell. But the one thing we really wanted them to do was, that most of you know what the Challenge Grant program out of HRRC is. It's a home repair program. And the agreement with Key Bank had been to make that go countywide. That's totally fallen apart.
Oh, no.
So it's just not the same now.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a couple of, well, number one, thank you for the work that you're doing. It coincides with a lot of different things that are going around the country, so I absolutely agree with this. I got a couple of questions as I was thinking about this, and I know we've had discussions going back and forth, and just for those watching here, I like for full transparency, I cut my teeth with Key, and so
I know, that's why I
I've
said
built
you-
my career there in loan services division, which touched the commercial loans and residential loans, as well as all of the regulatory work. From both the state of Ohio and Buffalo, Colorado, and Idaho. So I just like to put that out there. Now, so seeing these issues from a local standpoint, just something popped in my head. I know that one of the things even working there that was happening was these issues were bubbling up in municipalities across the country. And specifically, one of them was the city of Buffalo, which is the other seat of their house. And it got much larger when they bought First Niagara there and merged those banks. And so the city of Buffalo is trying to do that same leverage. And one of the commitments that they made was specifically to those two cities, the city of Cleveland, the city of Buffalo, to reinvest into those areas. And you haven't seen that. And so I was just wondering, I think in a way, many of these banks like that the municipalities, even in other states, are siloed out that way because it's a lot more difficult to leverage that. So I'm wondering if it's time to reopen some of those doors in other states and those municipalities where they have those seats and they're also dealing with those same issues and saying, hey, collectively, we're seeing what you're doing across the country. I mean, they're 3 hours away, so similar to Cleveland, and then that's why this is so critical to them as well. So I'm wondering if it's time to really leverage some of this work along with them, since they've made both that commitment to us and into Buffalo, New York. I'm wondering if that leverage coming from both ways would also help, because in some folks who studied those 13 points said that they might have hit 6 or 7 that they were positive about it, and it was murky on the others. And so I think there may be time to kind of increase that leverage, maybe through some of those other relationships as we're looking at this too. So I was just wondering if there was any conversation with any of the other entities or municipalities that they made these kind of commitments and agreements to across the country.
Cleveland is on board. They have a whole banking services organization in the finance department, and they're doing something similar with Key. We haven't reached out anywhere else. That would be NCRC. One of the other recommendations we made to the city was that the city join the National Community Reinvestment Coalition and start getting seats at the table to try to push money into low and middle income neighborhoods. What we found in the GCC work was that once we were done, they were giving grants to Future Heights and HRRC to do home repair work and other things. So it has benefits besides just getting the loans into the neighborhoods. You can get funds out of them for actually doing repairs and that sort of thing.
And that's, sorry, Chairwoman, if it's okay. I know. Okay. And that's the other thing I want to talk about is that in many cases, Key Bank is one of the most conservative banks in the country. It's very difficult for a large portion of the country to get those loans. And in fact, they did so well in 2008 when everyone collapsed because they didn't even have those first mortgages. They didn't pick those up till after they bought First Niagara years later. And so they didn't have that type of impact. So they're very risk averse in the first place. And so one of the things that I was thinking about is in our community, one of the things that they push back is they've said that they've tried the mortgages, they've tried to reinvest, but the people don't qualify. And so I'm looking at a couple of different ways. Can you invest in that financial education piece, number one? And can you invest, like you said, in repairing and in those properties and funding other things? Because it's not just giving out those mortgages, but there's a lot of other ways you can reinvest back in these communities. And so that's something I'm just thinking, because that's been one of the biggest excuses is that we've tried, but there's no one in these communities that qualify. What can we do? So my pushback on many of these financial institutions is what kind of financial literacy have you offered and committed to in addition to making this happen? And that's something that they really have not. And so financial literacy, I think, is one of those huge leverage points that we can make, that when you do this, there should be programming. There are a host of banks in Cuyahoga County that have had examples where those financial literacy programs, you're bringing 10, 20, 30 folks out at a time, and they're walking into home purchases because they've walked through those programs. Mm-hmm. You don't see Key Bank offering programs like this. So this is one of those things I think that we can also leverage with many of our local banks is what does that look like to our local communities, even with U.S. Bank? What type of financial literacy programs are you offering in these neighborhoods to help qualify some of these folks that may be on the brink of it, that just may need a couple tweaks or so, either through their credit or their savings or account? There's things we can do. And so I was just curious, how much discussion has happened around that, or has any? Because I know that some nonprofits have.
Yeah, that was one of the 13 points, and we expect that it'll be more specific like goals under the next contract. So we suggest that. That's a good point. The other thing was, just as an example, HRC, I don't think has had a default on those contracts it's done with low and middle income people for 30 years. And they don't use the same criteria for credit. They have a somewhat loosened criteria, and Key Bank has said they're gonna look at that at least, so that would loosen them up some. But the real trick there is that you need someone to sort of do a lot of what we call hand-holding of the person buying, to walk them through the loan process and the repayment process and the furnace going bad and what you gotta do kind of thing. So
I was interested in what you sent me in an email today about, I do believe I would like to have Frank Ford come and speak to us.
I forgot I sent you that. Sorry.
Yeah, but you talked about the study that could be done, Case Western Reserve, of where the loans are going, whether there is redlining inside Cleveland Heights. Those kinds of data points I'd like to see developed to do some kind of study. I'm wondering, is there a cost to that study?
Yep, there would be. I don't know what it is. Frank was doing this for free for probably a decade.
Yeah.
And in the process of doing this official work for the county, they paid him. I don't know how much. He works for the housing or the Fair Housing Center now. But when he did come and speak to us at the Racial Justice Task Force, and he talked there about the data he had developed showed that the west side of the county has recovered from the foreclosure crisis largely, and they actually have values that are above, generally speaking, above where they were before the crisis. The east side of the county, the inner ring suburbs and the east side of Cleveland have not recovered either at all or as well. And some places are still in bad shape, but we were kind of a mixed bag. The issue is the Census Bureau doesn't break out suburbs unless they have 60,000 people. And we don't anymore. We did back in the 50s, but we're down in the 40s now. So he would have to go through and pull out the census tracts. One thing we did look at though was because the Fair Housing Center did a report to HUD 4 years ago about fair housing in Cleveland Heights. And I added things up and put it, I have it in a memo somewhere that I did. But anyway, there were, I think, 13 tracts in Cleveland Heights. 7 or 8 were identifiably African American and another 7 or 8 were identifiably white. And there was a big difference in home ownership and rentals of homes. I mean, it was very large. In the African American community, a lot of the housing is rental. And in the non-African American community, a lot of it is home ownership. And that means that the African American community is particularly subject to bad landlords. And so that was the whole thing where the housing committee went in that direction.
Yeah.
And it's coming up on the 20th. I think we're gonna talk about that.
There's, if it's okay with the committee, I would like to schedule Frank Ford for a meeting with us to talk about a possible study and invite the administration to come and let us know so we can kind of see if this is something that's realistic. Because we're talking about trying to do data-driven legislation and I'm committed to that. So, is that okay? Sound realistic? Go ahead.
So it seems to me that this is something, I mean, certainly if the Racial Justice Task Force took it on, it's something that is now in our hands and we need to move forward with it. You know, what I would like to see, and again, data-driven, really what is the extent of the problem that we're trying to solve? I mean, is there some data that we can look at or point to? I also just thinking about if we were to suggest to the administration to rework our service agreements with our banking relationships, we maybe look at what other like-sized cities, hopefully in Cleveland, but I'm not sure we're gonna find them. But it seems like that there's other cities that have, you know, bigger municipalities that have smaller municipalities, smaller like our size next to them, that maybe have already done some of this kind of work. I mean, so instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, what has worked in other cities? And I gotta think that there's best practices out there that we can pull. You know, get some of that data, so at least we're not starting from scratch. I mean, we kind of have a turbulent back office right now when we look at all the things that we're looking at with ARPA, and it just seems like I'd hate to throw more stuff on our administration that's new when we have existing stuff that is just not going well at all, that needs to get worked on. We have a great interim director, just saying, but I mean, there's turbulence even in your department just because of that. So I guess whatever we can do to give, you know, maybe have the tools already done and ready, so, you know, our staff doesn't have to look into it, I think that would be beneficial. But I think this is I think this is good stuff, so.
I could respond with another thought. The study that was done in 2020 was done, I would botch this up, but it's a report that's got to go to HUD about effectively furthering fair housing. And it's part of the statute, it's part of our commitment when we get HUD money, which we do, lots of it, that we report back to HUD every year about what we're doing to further fair housing. So for instance, the last report had in it I think both pay to stay and non-discrimination on source of income were in it as things that we should do, and we ended up doing them. It's a report that I don't think ever got sent to the city council under the city manager. We haven't done one for 3 or 4 years, so it's probably coming due. And that's something Frank could do. And it would be what's going on. And that last report focused a lot on disability housing and making places more accessible, but there were pieces of it that we used, and that's where I got the data I just said about the rentals versus ownership.
I need to move on, but I would like to have Addie, can you do a doodle poll to schedule our next meeting with Frank Ford being our primary guest, and hopefully we'll get you on there as well, Director Schuster. Evening dates are best. So,
Well, unless he can't, I mean, let me know if there's something working where he can't be in the evening.
Frank will do evening, I think.
Okay.
so,
He came to us in the evening, Barbara came too.
so if we could add, I made a list of putting Frank Ford on there. We've got his, Vera gave me his email, and Mayor and Director Schuster, and the Racial Justice Task Force, Rhonda, Reggie, and Gary on the doodle poll, as well as committee members. And Director, I don't know, I put that on there, it doesn't make any sense. But you and I can look at some dates I had in the next couple of weeks, or would you rather wait till September, committee members?
Whatever you think is best.
Let me look at the calendar.
Yeah, Addie's gonna look at the calendar for us.
And-
Thank you.
Yeah, and Addie, if there's additional, I mean, if the Racial Justice Task Force were videoed, did they video any of those meetings?
Yeah, let me talk to Steve about getting you the recordings.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, or just a link or something, just so we can at least look at that in advance. I think we can save a lot of our time if we.
Yeah, then I would probably say we should do September, maybe the first week of September.
Yeah.
So we can sit down and talk.
All right,
I did a draft of the report that was long narrative, too long, so it didn't get the light of day. But it has a lot of this data in it, I think, that I could send to you.
no, if you wouldn't mind doing that, that'd be great. I appreciate your help. And then I'd like to reach out to you before the next meeting to kind of formulate some questions or directions for Frank's presence here, so you don't detain him too long, and some questions that move us forward. So,
Okay,
All
I think
right.
we can do that.
thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Nice. Okay, Director Schuster. We printed out ordinance 127/2024. I've got it.
Okay, you got a copy?
I've got it on my computer. This ordinance is establishing salary schedules, position classifications, and other compensation and benefits for officers and employees of the city, and it declares a necessity that this legislation become immediately effective as an emergency measure. Director Schuster is here to help us understand. I guess I'd like to know what you want to tell us that we should make note of as we go through all these pages. If we need to look at every page, or if there's some that you want to highlight. And then if we have any questions for the committee members have for you, then we can entertain those at the end of any discussion you want to start.
So section 1 is just all the positions in the city and the 3% bullet page. So anything bolded, those were the new positions that were put in the 2024 budget, and I'm just putting them in the ordinance now. So like position 19, 22, 23, those were voted in the 2024 budget. Yeah, 30, 44, 46. And there was 70, 75.
So that's what that bolding means.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
You guys have any questions on the COLA?
With all the changes, are you doing, I know you are, doing calculations for what these changes in the pay schedule will do to the budget?
Yes. So the 3% COLA was already budgeted for the 2024 year on all the positions, so that shouldn't be a budget increase at all. So even retroing it back to April 1st, we did put that in the budget, yeah.
Okay, okay. I wanted to know, so the increases that we have in here are based on the Archer report or not?
No.
Okay.
No. You're still waiting. I'm waiting for a new timeline. I know when we talked to them last, this month in August, they're taking all the jobs, looking at the job descriptions and the surveys that the employees did. And then the beginning of September, they're due in to the city. They'll meet with the administration and then they'll meet with each director going over all the results and then their opinion on their jobs that their employees are doing. Hopefully by the end of September, beginning of October, we get the numbers because we need it for the budget. I'm really pushing that. Yeah.
Assert yourself.
I know. Yes, because I don't want to get all the way through the budget and then find out in November that we're gonna give all these raises, completely change the budget for 2025.
And I thank you for including the municipal court salaries in this report.
Yes, yes.
Because that seemed like it was
That
important.
was my oversight.
Oh,
Yeah, when I was downloading it and putting it
None
in
of us
Word.
noticed, except for the judge.
Right, the judge did notice. He did, yes.
well, that's what they wanted to see, so I thank you for doing that.
Yeah. And section 3, the fire was changed to include the new contract dates. I did change that. Section 8 from the original one, I changed it and it should say 13 holidays now. And then section 18, I changed it to the April 1st, 2024. And changed that ordinance number to the 038-2023, which was the current one. I still have to ask Law, cause we did that other one in May for the seasonal position, so
Whether we have to put that in instead?
Yeah.
We can, I can.
That's at 91-2024, isn't it? Ordinance 91-2024,
yeah,
one in green.
the one in green, I just wanted to show that that's why these didn't change in this one, cause we already changed it.
That was helpful. Does anybody on the committee have any questions? Counselor Cobb?
I do not have any questions, thank you.
I would like to ask again about the van driver pay, because that was an issue I raised at the committee of the whole, because I'm concerned about their services being cut to our seniors. So do you have any competing cities' salary rates, or can you, is there something I could help with to get those, or to see what we're competing with out there?
For the van drivers,
Yeah,
no, I did pull local 860 contract because they have drivers. They have drivers at the community center. These drivers here are the part-time ones and the other ones all are full-time union members. So I wanted to make sure we're not gonna be paying a part-time non-union person in conflict with a union person. So in their union contract for the drivers, they start at 21.13. So So just keep that in mind, like this one ends at 1786. And most of these have to have their CDL, they do the special license.
Madam Chair, question.
Yes, Counselor
Do
Collins.
we know whether the problem is the pay or the problem is that we're just not getting any applicants regardless of what we're paying? Because what, do they need a CDL to transport our seniors?
I don't think so. I think they're regular van, like,
Yeah, those
Yeah, I
are
don't-
15 passengers.
yeah.
So it's trying to get at why is this happening that we can't get that person hired so we can use the van to the level it was used before. And Mayor Sarin did suggest to us that they're talking to the organization that provides senior transportation from the county. So that's
Okay.
something else that may help us if we can add in access to that service that they provide as well.
I can tell you just from experience, your van drivers, your bus drivers, that's all the same pool of applicants, and just across the county, it's a major issue from school buses to municipal buses. It's just difficult, and so finding those slots. So your average person that would drive a 15-passenger van probably already is qualified for a CDL, and so if they were going to go between those positions, it's just very difficult because you're competing with jobs that in some cases could be paying $10 more an hour
Yeah.
for transportation. It's just a struggle.
So I recall from the school district, what we did is, bus drivers is a huge problematic hiring experience for school districts. So we would train our own train drivers to be bus drivers, to get them into the field. Now, it's not necessarily like this, but maybe train them so that they can get their, is it CDL, is that what it is, and use that as an incentive, but that's something I think the HR department I'm not sure that's within the realm of this committee, because it's not what we're paying. I mean, that would be probably under the Administrative Services Committee.
I think it's multifaceted. I'd just like to see them get back to the routes they used to provide for these folks that require transportation, so it's something we'll keep talking about, keep bringing up.
Just another question. I don't know what other cities around us are doing, but I know, I wish I could think of the other two. There's these two tiny suburbs that are also near the Fort Worth area in Texas, and I was just there, and I was interested because there was a van and it had 3 different municipalities' names on it. And I'm not quite sure what kind of circulator it was, but it was taking folks from nursing homes to the grocery stores, and it was going between these inner ring cities, and the cities were pooling together. So I'm just wondering if there's something that maybe we could pool with Shaker or South Euclid and that would serve all of our seniors, and maybe that would help leverage that as well, just as an idea.
And just having pulled it up on ZipRecruiter, it looks like the average for Ohio is $15.45 an hour. Cleveland pays $15.73 an hour. Brook Park is $15.45.
Average.
Yeah, and there isn't
Teams,
a
14.78.
transportation company right now from Ohio, which that isn't starting at 19 or 21. And I think RTA, you're coming in, it's about 21, 22, but it's in increments. They're committed. You'll be at $25 an hour no matter a year. So that's what it is. It's that gap.
I wonder if this is something that we could give to the Transportation Mobility Committee to work on. To do the research and find out what comparable cities are offering,
Awesome.
even to talk to some of these other cities close around.
It's also not a bad job for someone who might be in college or something, to look at it that way, the way we're advertising, that those hours a day might work well for somebody who might. So maybe it's who we're advertising as jobs to that might be helpful. Because I'm thinking that's a pretty nice job to.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw one of them earlier come down and pick up something from here. And she looked like a college-age kid to me, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked that job in college.
Heck yeah.
Are there any other questions on this huge ordinance? Because if the committee, I would like to ask the committee if they're ready to move it forward to council.
I feel comfortable with that.
Okay, so we'll move it to council. I think it's on the agenda
It
on
is.
Monday for second reading, so. Alright, thank you. Yeah, it says that right on the ordinance. Thank you, Director Schuster. Oh, okay, man, you need your stuff. It's the word budget that kind of makes this important for you to read.
Yeah.
There are budget schedules here. Did everybody get one that's got some paperwork attached?
We'll throw one to you.
You don't have it yet.
Yeah, and then I have all these too.
Okay. Well, let's pass that one down first.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
This,
Each one is a
These are-
packet.
Yeah,
each one's a packet?
yes.
You
Grab
have
the
a packet.
paperclip.
You have a packet.
Yeah.
You need a packet. You need a packet.
There's
You
lots
made
going
the
on in this one.
We need, we're missing 6 or
Wait,
7
I need a
people.
packet.
And I'm gonna grab another one too.
Well, we printed out enough not knowing exactly who all was gonna appear. Okay.
Do you wanna address where you're at on here or
Okay.
how you want us to fit into what you need from us or where you wanna go?
Okay, so an update, we did the tax budget, you guys passed it in June, everyone signed it at the end of June. I turned it into the county and they accepted it on July 15th.
Great.
So we're done with that. On Monday, August 12th, I emailed all the 2025 revenue estimates to the department. And then there's a column on the spreadsheet that asks for their input of what they think they're gonna receive in 2025. And I should be receiving those back tomorrow by 5, I hope. I hope. It's a lot to ask for, in 5 days. I am behind, this should have already have been done.
Director Schuster, how does the department go about ascertaining the revenues? Do they look at past history?
Yes, I take the last 5 years,
Okay,
it's all in a spreadsheet and I can share it anytime, so I think I'm back to 2019. And I do 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 real, all actual revenue numbers. I take the 2024 budget revenues. I do through June 30th, 2024, where we are midpoint and where I think we're gonna be at the end of the year. I make my predictions for 2025 and then I ask the departments to look at it and see if I'm off. This is a good way to say, like, if a department says I'm gonna get $800,000 in and I'm looking in August saying I only got 95,000 in, where is it? Then they can look, was it a grant that we are just waiting to, did we not get reimbursed yet? Are we gonna get it next year? Are we not? So, yeah. And they basically are looking at my stuff too. Did I make the good prediction? Did I put $1 million I shouldn't have in their department? Or less.
okay.
So those are all due back by 5.
You're on schedule.
Now, if you look at my first one, I'm almost, a month off. I usually like to do this in July.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I like to give people time, but I only gave them 5 days because I'm too down. So I'm hoping to meet with the mayor sometime next week to go over what the department said, what I'm saying, and then he would go through with me and say, okay, I know about this, let's cut this. So that should be next week. I'm hoping Monday I open all the 2025 positions. And that's every position budgeted in the city. In 2024, I throw everything in 2025, estimate everything, and then I give it to the departments to look at. Here are all your positions in your department. This is everything that's already currently employed and all the open positions that we haven't been able to fill. It's everything. And then the departments need to go through every job and make sure that it's something that we should, be working on, either filling the position if it's open next year, maybe revamping the position to the departmental needs next year. So I'm hoping to do that Monday. And then by the end of next week or the beginning of the week after, I'll do the whole entire 2025 budget and pass it out to the departments. And that's what they're gonna look at to determine, you know, what we're gonna budget for the 2025 year. So,
Are you optimistic about where we are for going into 2025 in terms of revenue and being able to still continue to spend and get some of these maintenance items done that we need to do and that sort of thing?
so far, yes. Yes. If everything stays about the same in 2024, yes.
President Kuda is not here today, as you can see, but I will talk to him about how we go ahead and schedule the public hearings. How would you like that process to work?
That's how you guys would like it too. I know last year we did them during the day.
Yeah,
We did.
we did.
I think we did them in 3 days, like
Yeah,
3
3
half a
days.
days.
Yep,
They
3
were
half days.
intense, but we got them all done.
Yes. And I kind
I
of
think that
put,
worked well. I
It
mean,
was a great process and
I thought,
Yeah.
let's see why it would change, yeah,
yeah, I
Oh
think
my
it was
God.
good.
yes.
So Eddie, can you help with that scheduling?
Yep, I will
as
go
well?
ahead and get all that stuff scheduled. I'll talk to you about it. But I
Get
mean,
it, yeah.
looks like we've got a week kind of.
I tried to put the like estimated times of what it took last year, so we can kind of,
yeah, I was trying to think of how long we did each department.
Yeah, that's on
yeah, I put it
that second
on
page.
the second page, I did an estimate.
So
Yeah.
I'll go through and pick out when we can do stuff.
So as the newbie here, so we really don't get involved in this until the middle of November.
Aside from giving her, I think we have to give you our budget stuff beforehand.
Yeah.
What's your
And I
timeline
did-
for us, by the way?
Has President Kuda got back to you on that date?
No,
Okay, I'll talk to him.
okay,
Thank you, Eddie.
So we needed a date for our stuff to
Right.
submit over
Yes,
to.
yeah.
Right.
And then they'll do the presentations, and
Mhm.
schedule for the day after we submit that, they'll roll through with the budget.
yeah, well, yeah.
So I think we just are in line with what you want at September 2nd. Or no, that's the expense budget. When do you want it from us? And we'll be at the September 9th, we'll have to fill in, let us know what is available still on the 9th,
Okay,
from the 9th to the 2nd.
Did we do a finance meeting the last time when we did, or we just came together committee hall? I just wanted the fastest
For
way
the-
to get it to, I just didn't,
Oh, for like our,
to schedule
Process.
something to, just so that
Discuss.
we're not the last people she's. But I
for
couldn't
your,
remember.
just your council's budget?
yeah, just for council
I
budget.
think we just met with,
I think it was just with Melody and Craig.
That's what I thought.
yeah, I thought there was,
Is that,
yeah,
I think that's right.
I think we discussed it in a
And
committee of
then
the
they
whole and then you
presented it
guys,
to-
presented it.
Is that how
So
it
I think that's how that went.
We got input from
yeah,
Which I've been keeping track of requests that people have put
That's
together
right, and you
over
guess did meet with
course of the
them,
year, so.
and then they had-
Okay.
That's right.
I will maybe discuss we'll discuss some of it now and then we can.
Yeah, the council budget,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
As of June 30th, the general fund unencumbered balance is 27 million again. So what's adding to that, bringing it back up?
the interest,
It's still from ARPA.
oh, yeah. It is, it's doing really good. So, I know Eddie, you said something, what will be really important from you guys is these dates towards the end. If that last meeting in December is not gonna happen, I'm gonna have to know basically as soon as possible, cause that will push my whole timeline up like 2 weeks, because this is the year end
Oh.
transfers, budget amendments, and
council might
and
go
the,
on a recess. That's-
yeah, I heard,
Yeah.
yes, and if that doesn't happen, then it will be like a 2-week push forward, and I'm gonna have to start getting the departments closing out purchase orders and doing their final purchase orders in October, November.
We did a holiday recess?
Not last year. We
Yes, I
didn't.
think this is the reason, because
Yeah.
there's so much happening with there's no way.
I mean,
I mean, this is 10 days before
The only-
Christmas.
right,
Yeah,
it's, I don't think it's that.
I know, and I think you guys were having
Pushed
meetings
up to-
until the
Yeah.
last
I think
couple of,
18th was the last one, or maybe 21st last year, I think.
something
Yeah,
like
it was
that, it
right-
was way,
right there.
Yeah.
cause
Because
of the
of-
ARPA stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think it was the 21st.
Which we still have to resolve, so I don't see, I mean, I don't speak for the whole council, but I don't know.
I don't see how we do it.
Yeah, now this is tight as it is.
Well, we're gonna try, okay, it may mean some meetings that are at a time that we don't have a regular meeting schedule, but we're gonna make it work and try to do the best we can to
Okay,
get you what you need, Director Schuster. I think that's really crucial in this whole process because, yeah, year end's a big deal,
it is,
In the county.
it's a lot of work.
yeah.
If you had to say, what was the dead end cutoff date that you need our information to you?
The budget stuff or like to know that,
The budget stuff, our council budget stuff.
oh, just your regular council budget? So you guys don't really have a lot of money, so. And I don't see that changing.
We're trim.
Do not see that changing.
She found a great way to
Like-
tell us we're broke, you see that?
Yeah, no.
So,
Comparatively to other cities, we do operate on this very small budget,
you
you know.
do a nice job.
Well, that's what, Patty and Kuda are working on after we have our discussion this afternoon, so.
Okay.
Is there any other information that, in this packet, Director Schuster provided the May financial statements and brought it as of June 30th, so these figures are good for June 30?
Yeah.
Okay. And she also included in this little packet the council's 2024 expense budget, which is something we are gonna talk about in a minute, and then I've asked Addie to work with Director Schuster to track 2024 approved capital projects. So when we do go into our hearings, remember in our conversations last year, we understood that we were gonna do this in 2023 and did it happen to ask the directors. So I think this will be very useful as we keep it up to date. So thank you for doing all of that, Director Schuster. I so appreciate you. This is for you all to look at, and I don't know if you wanna send it out to all of council.
Yeah, I think
Thank
It's really important information, and sometimes it just takes the dark of the night when everything's quiet in the house to look at it and absorb it, right? Yeah. So if everybody's okay with that, I am going to move on to the next topic, which would be council's budget process, and I think that if you wanna take off and go home, that'd be all right, because we are gonna talk about those items that we have already got on our list, right? And how we wanna let Director Kuda know if there are any additional ones.
unless you wanted to stay.
Okay, listen,
Thank you.
to know what's coming.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so did you want to pass out our
Council Chairwoman, just curiosity, last year, this is really did we ever ask you for a list of things that you needed? Like,
Yes.
We did
Yeah.
that, the report, okay.
Yeah, oh,
I couldn't recall what that looked like.
and you'll see I put some stuff down in here too.
Okay.
So part of what we were gonna talk about is the council's budget process, and I kind of addressed that already, right? Because we need to, the
Make sure
three
you
of
get
us
everything.
look at what's on this list.
Yeah.
And if
If there's anything
when
additional we need to know.
if there's any additional, if you think about it, you can always send it into Addie, right? You know, when you do, because we do have what, a week?
A week, give it a week.
What timeline do you wanna give us for any requests?
Well, I'd like to have it by the end of August, and I'm not here on the 30th, so give it to me by the 29th. That would be,
And to Addie by the 29th, if there's anything that you wanna add.
and I'll make it all look all nice. Send it off to Tara.
You can send out an email to everybody as well to remind them. And then you and President Kuda will take that to the bank, sort of, kind of.
Yep. And I'll make sure that he's got if Tara, if you send me the rest of the open dates available in that week.
Before you go, Director Schuster, this spreadsheet that you've been tracking, can you, when you do any updates or every couple of weeks or so, if you put an update on it, would you send it out to us, please?
Yeah.
As we move towards November and those hearings.
Yeah.
I know you have so much on your plate. Don't, and if it's unrealistic, you will please let me know.
And these are the only ones that,
I do have a few more,
okay,
but I think we can work with these for now.
okay.
If you want me to add to the list, I can.
I didn't know if there was anything else. Cause like the two on there, there's two on here that I do not have in the 2024 budget.
So I looked at that. The skate park we did next from the ARPA overall with King Park, just so you,
Okay.
I did look at that.
Okay.
The other one I was not sure about.
Which was the other one?
The Cedar Lake Garage.
Oh, the Cedar Lee Garage, because we only did for
You did the two.
the two, Coventry and Lennox.
So we didn't do any
Mm-mm.
procedurally?
No, because I think we had decided that, didn't we decide that was something that we thought that Flattering Collins should maybe,
Yeah,
Do- or that we should wait until after at least to, there was a reason that we didn't.
And now I'm
it was sold, wasn't it? Wasn't that part of the transaction? At least in the TIF, that Flannery Collins was gonna get the garage and maintain it in.
Was that it? And that's why that was,
yeah.
I'll ask Law on that one.
I don't think it transfers for a while.
But I think that was something that we had talked about. If it, even though it didn't transfer, it would be,
It would be, and I know we have,
I think I remember that.
yeah, but I don't remember the exact,
I'll talk to the law department about that.
but that was the reason.
Yeah.
So this is a list of other items, including what you've had. Don't, a council can take that, I don't wanna put that in Director Schuster.
And then there's this one if you want to take notes.
Yeah. And then this can work very well with the spreadsheet that Director Schuster gave us, sorry.
There you go.
So there's a lot of stuff here, but I'm hoping that everybody will take it and once again, look at it when you have a moment to think about the whole budget for our city as well as what council needs to discuss and make decisions on, and then bring it back together like Director Schuster will be doing in our booklet, in our book. Melody, do you have anything that you would like to say to us, any recommendations you have for us in terms of this process?
Well, I think we had a good process last year.
Yes.
I think you follow that, we have the
Yes.
interviews with each of the departments, I think it's important. What we did with council is we, as a council met and put forth our ideas about what we wanted. Then Craig and I met with people and drafted it up, and then we brought it back and we made some changes again, but, so that was, I'm sorry to see you haven't gotten your laptops.
Oh, just
Just
got
got them.
Just got them.
Oh, okay, those are yours, okay, those are the ones I got.
Question for you and Councilman when you met with council, I recall that.
Yeah.
We did this. And this is just what you presented to the administration to talk about, or with finance, is that how that worked? And then
Yeah.
And did you come back to council or we just go right into the
No,
budget
we
hearing?
went
That's the part I
We
was
came
trying to.
back to council so that you knew what we had done and made a few changes after that because there were some adjustments.
Because I remember the adjustments, I couldn't remember before or after you guys met with finance.
Right, so I would think that there might be adjustments after that week of September 9th where we
That's
do
the part I
the
was missing.
internal
Okay, so you got
hearing process and then we
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, okay.
plus I need to get some figures on some of these that are just kind of nebulous at this point.
So do we need to bring this to council and like in the next, like add it to the agenda for Monday, or can we just send it out to people to remind?
I think I should just send it out, remind them, say, look, let me know.
Yeah.
You've got until the 29th.
Yeah,
If it's
period.
not on there, then it's not going in the budget.
Right.
So if some of my suggestions are nebulous, let me know and I'll get you some figures, okay?
Well, you were very good about getting me figures. There were a couple that I think we want to touch on. The women's
Women's,
celebration funding, and then the Racial Justice Task Force funding.
what did we spend this year on the women's?
Oh gosh, we spent almost nothing. Like, very minimal.
I was gonna ask that too, if council was gonna discuss all of our events like that and what a budget would look like, because I realize we're kind of doing it ad hoc. And I don't know how difficult that is.
That's very difficult.
You have to do piecemealing those together, and since we know what we're putting on, I think that's something we really need to
Like an
kind of-
event budget.
Yeah, a complete event budget, so you're not scrambling for that for anything that we're hosting or sponsoring, cause I know it's the women's event. Black History Month can go either way. I know that the administration and the city as a whole do an event, but there was something else that comes directly from council, isn't there, that we host? I could have sworn.
I don't think we did this year, but Democracy Day also would be nice, maybe we did a little something.
I don't know why I thought there was one more events we did an award ceremony. There wasn't.
I don't think so, we're pretty similar.
I think can we put 1,000 in there for the Amazing Women Celebration? And the RJTF, they're looking for research and development. Gary, when they talked about money for funding for the Racial Justice Task Force for possibly hiring consultants, I think, and also looking at research and development, maybe paying somebody to do some data analysis, is that we don't have an Racial Justice Task Force right now, but if we did bring it together and form it again, which would be something Administrative Services probably could look at, right, Counselor Cobb? Because that was one of the recommendations, that there would be some people who would continue to work as the Racial Justice Task Force to do what Gary just did today, to consult with council to see how the recommendations can be implemented.
That's a conversation I'm willing to have about whether we want to set up another or reinstitute a smaller racial justice task force committee.
So I'll leave that number blank for now, because it's sort of backwards.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And welcome, Megan. I don't know how you,
Yeah, I'm not sure how to budget for that. I, had known previously that we have been talking to Future Heights about doing it, but
right,
I don't know.
Tammy's not right.
The ones that I'm kind of wondering about are the more like in the suggestions that are not necessarily for council budget, but were recommendations from council for other budgets. For example, President Kuda had said 2 new positions in the inspectional services department, information specialist and distress rental property specialist. I have no idea if that's even being discussed internally. Of course, we talked about animal control before, and if we're gonna do something, I'm not sure if that's something that we necessarily need to really preemptively budget for, since we don't actually have a plan for if we're doing that with other cities or what we're doing, cause.
Well, we're gonna talk about it in our safety committee.
Yeah.
And the recommendation is to do some surveys, which is.
Okay, so the surveys are gonna cost some money, so,
But that's one of the, if the committee wants to move forward with it, but it all kind of comes down to the fact that we can legislate this and we
Yeah.
can fund it, but does the work actually get done? Is there interest in getting the work done?
Right.
There's ideas of traffic calming on Lee Road. And I guess this is sort of where we may suggest something, we may fund it, but then what happens?
I'm wondering if some of these suggestions could potentially, like the 2 new positions, animal control, the beat cops for commercial districts, the city engineer, internal city engineer that you had suggested, whether or not those would go just to the mayor and or departments for consideration if they had thought of that. If not, we can always just, again, like you said, put it in there and
What I guess I don't understand is that I know we've got two bodies of government here, and I guess this is where there's murkiness. Well, I'll use that word again in this room. So there's murkiness in my head about, okay, well, you have interest in doing X, Y, and Z, and you have very good reason for doing it, and we fund it, and we hope it's gonna get done, but then it doesn't seem like there's collaboration that goes on to make sure we're all on the same page. Because likewise, there's things that the administration gives this body to do that we do approve. It's important, we get it, we wanna see it done. So, how do we find that balance?
Well, one of the things that we did last year when we had our public hearing with the directors was we would take, let's say, those two inspectors, and we would bring it up for discussion at the public hearing and give that department the opportunity to consider it. Because we did do changes to budget, remember?
Right.
We did at the end of the year, so, yeah, so there's,
Yeah.
even though we're trying to get everything done really fast, that's where we had some input on
Yeah.
things. Yes, Melody?
Yeah, we even said during the hearings, the mayor had given them pretty much everything they wanted, and we said, what else?
Yeah.
We got the money, what else would make it better?
Cause I know we increased the police cars.
Yes,
I think we ended up with 2 ambulances by the end
yes,
of
two
that.
instead of the one,
Um,
yeah.
I'm not
The
quite
two
sure.
leaf backs instead of
The
one.
the leaf backs, there was some special equipment for some tactical police cars that was added, and then
Traffic calming.
the traffic calming cameras, I think that all came out of collaboration
Yeah.
from that budget. And I think having the directors there, because I think they did a great job with that wish list, but I could tell that there were some things that maybe they thought that we wouldn't lean in on. And so I think we were able to flesh out what else is there, and that kind of allowed us to see what they could do. And I know ARPA helped.
I was just gonna say, yeah,
All right.
you moved a lot of the capital into the ARPA, so
Yeah.
And we still
we
may
could
do
st-
that. We still may be doing
Uh-huh.
that.
But
no,
part,
we won't be,
But-
ARPA's done it,
Yeah.
and we encumber, everything has to be done by December 31st, so there is,
But we haven't completely detailed out those special projects, like the shipping containers, which 500,000 was set aside for it. But Counselor Maddox has alluded to the fact that he might not need that amount, and there are some others to work on, so. So tell me what you're thinking, Director Schuster, because I'm trying to understand, if we've finished our work on ARPA and it's now in the administration's hands do you consider it all obligated?
as of right now, yes, there's a list, and everything's obligated, into the projects unless we hear otherwise.
Okay.
There are some council projects, like the shipping containers, the tiny homes, like where are we, I guess, on that with you guys? Cause if you're not gonna need the money, we need to know.
Yeah.
So that we can move it back.
Yeah,
And
so
that's-
we can come back to council and say, here's the money.
And
What are
that's
we-
exactly where I'm at with the shipping containers is, number two, one question is, is this something that we still wanna do that's viable based on where we are right now? Number two, what does that cost look like? And then how quickly can we concretize that so we can know what that expenditure is and ship
Get
the
it
rest of it?
going,
And
yeah.
that's where I'm at. And so my goal is to try to wrap that up long before this so that we have a clear sense of all of our expenditures for the year. And so that's what I'm working with the administration on. But you're absolutely right. It's one thing to give you guys the numbers and the totals. It's another thing to flesh out the details and start working. I think that's on the council's end, whether or not we're saying that there's some projects that we just won't be able to do, or we need to really lean in on something to see. And I think we're beyond that point. I absolutely agree for August.
but maybe I use the tiny houses as an example, and I don't know the dollar amount offhand. My computer lit up, but let's just say it's 500,000. For the sake of example, and I assume DeVita, Councilman Russell is working with the right administration contact here. Let's say it's gonna cost half that amount, that's $250,000 that we could use to something else, and we have to find a place for that.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, why isn't that work getting done? Why don't we know, cause this is months, some of the stuff.
My goal, I can only speak for my project since it touched planning and development as Parks and Rec. I could say that I could do my project through there. But a lot of the work that I did was through my planning and development meetings. And one of the things I'm at this point with administration is concretizing that and bringing it back to planning and development to really flesh out what we're trying to do from that committee. And so that's where I'm at. Now, I'm assuming that every council person I think is working their projects a different way. That might be the problem.
Okay.
But I think maybe we need to come back to this table and do some type of special project meeting or something to really discuss how to flesh out these and where each council person is with those projects. Like a work session and for just those ARPA things to find out, you know what, either we've got to figure it out at this point or it's not gonna happen. Maybe that's where we are with these updates, but I'm thinking that's the way, because
Yeah, we have two tracks we really need to discuss, right? Yeah. So I'm gonna challenge you all to look at these pages that Addie's provided for us for the requests that have been made. If there's anything you'd like to add, or you wanna see continued actually from what we budgeted from last year, please let her know by the
29th.
29th.
I would like to just point out two on my list. The SE Blueprint archival services, our archives are a mess. I'd really like to see what we can get scanning all of our documents in. They will come out and do a free estimate, so I can probably set that up pretty soon.
Where are those stored right now?
They are downstairs, in the basement, in a very large room that has a lot of boxes, one of which is leaning over. It's kind of dangerous. It's a little, it makes me stress going in there. And there's a lot of stuff in there that's where I found like the scrapbooks of Kane Park from back when they closed the amphitheater. I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff down there. I know Ohio History Connection would really like that. A lot of that stuff.
Can we do that as an other on Monday's meeting? I'd be happy to bring it up, just so we can get approval from council to get that quote.
okay with
Hey,
that.
Councilor Maddox.
Just a quick question. I'm going back because you got me thinking about ARPA now and the budget coming up. Let's say the departments come and they present these budgets and I know we probably don't need one right now, but let's say that one of the things they asked for is this fire truck going into next year and approving that for that budget. But we recognize we still got this huge pot of ARPA funds here this year. We can pull things they requested for next year and try to spend that money down this year with those needs. Is that something that's possible?
If there is money, yeah.
You know, so if we need to allocate that, we're
There are
hearing,
things
I
we
like
can
the-
quickly allocate.
we can quickly say, you know what, we've got this sitting here, they've got this need. So that's where I'm thinking it's gonna help, so that we're not just buying anything, but if there's something maybe we can get early and knock out through that budget, it might help. But I don't know how confusing that would be for,
I know, cause I would hope that wouldn't be part of the 2025,
Yeah.
like
Right.
with the new like ARPA team, with the law, myself, Eric's, and I'm hoping we're gonna start really getting a handle on it. So that's why I'm asking you guys is your projects, where are you? Are you gonna get them done? Cause we're gonna need to know that, because I would like to have almost everything bid out no later than the end of October, right? So you get it bid out and then we have basically a month to get the contracts in order and get it encumbered by the end of the year. I would hope before then, we're gonna push for September, but we're almost there.
so you need the end of October.
I'd like to know before then, almost, like if you, yeah, but, cause if we're gonna bid out, you have to do your specs and stuff. And that would have to be in October, and
Straighten up in August and September so that you,
so we know, yes.
And this is what we need to look at for Director Schuster for that. The spreadsheet has our budgeted items on it.
That's for 2024, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe there's some on there that we didn't accomplish and we don't plan to accomplish. It's kind of late in the year for some of them, so how do you wanna look at that, Addie? What can we do? They could be continued,
Yeah.
right? If we didn't spend them into 2025.
I believe that's correct.
So if you're not gonna spend it in 2024, you would have to re-budget it for 2025. And the 2024, basically, what I'll do at the end of the year, that's part of the
That's part
year
of the
end,
year.
is that I decrease the 2024 budget, so then we would have it for the 2025.
Thank you.
Yes.
okay.
Thank you.
The only other one I wanted to mention, that last one on there, Laserfiche. Yeah, not to be confused with microfiche. Laserfiche is a company, it's a contract management and workflow solution. We currently don't have a contract management solution that we use. Beechwood uses it. They love it there. It's a repository as well, so everything's in one place and it can go through the workflow of who needs to sign everything. We're not sending thousands of emails back and forth and getting different versions. I think that's something that would really help process wise.
And efficiencies.
Yes. So that's something I'd really like to, and I have a connection with a sales rep there because they come to our OMCA meetings.
Is that a contract that has to be signed, like we were just talking about before 2025, or can we just include it?
We could include it in budget and do it for 2025, yeah.
So is this part of your role or is this part of like the purchasing department?
It kind of overlaps because every department would have their own, like anytime anyone enters into a contract, it would go into the system. So then it would go through all the, signatories that were needed, between law, the mayor, finance, whatever department. It's a really, really good program. I've seen it in action, it's pretty awesome.
Sounds good. Anything else?
Can we
Yes.
circle back about ARPA stuff? What is the scheduled update council's gonna be getting? I mean, it was nice to get the one at the beginning of the month. It was the 8th, I think it was the August 5th meeting.
We have the new law firm coming in on Monday to committee of the whole, so they should give us something then,
Okay.
in terms of what they've looked
Yeah.
at and where their head's at and where they're going.
It almost seems to me that we're getting to a point beyond crisis where there should be some kind of update that, not necessarily for the point of council, but just for the point of just transparency of process, where you get an update. Maybe I would say we probably should have been getting them monthly. I think at one point with the old consultant, we were promised monthly and that didn't really materialize. But just as far as I think good practice and good, seems as far as good process, can we get them like twice a month? I mean, we have 2 meetings a month, 15 minutes, a quick update, same sheet that we look at, just compare one versus the next.
Yeah, I think that's something that President Kuda has wanted to include on the upcoming committee of the wholes as we move
Yeah.
forward. I would like to make it a standing item as well.
Yeah,
just
makes a lot of sense.
Because then it's just kept on our minds.
Well, can this body make that recommendation?
I would say
Good.
yes.
Would you be agreeable to that, to make that request from the new group? So that's what we'd like to do, is get updates as often as we can. Or we'd like to say every 2 weeks. The regular scheduled COTW.
And-
Until we get through the end of this year, we have to talk about these pieces of information.
Keep it before us.
Yeah,
And since you're a member of the committee, I mean, what would be my expectation, I mean, I'm sure there's other council that may have other opinions, but I mean, you probably have a working document that you all share, it's probably already prepared in your format. I would be okay using that. I mean, so I don't think there needs to be a special presentation or
Yeah, I just think
go
that
through
spreadsheet that,
items.
Yeah,
We already
that
have that we-
that we've been updating.
yeah,
And I don't believe that the updates would come from the new law firm.
okay.
That's not more than, it would be from the
Okay.
committee, the city committee.
Okay,
Because we're meeting with everyone, I think that's the next step when we met the last time, is that we are gonna meet with the departments and get a handle on where they are on their projects.
Okay.
that would be very, very helpful, very helpful.
so then I'll just budget that, not every other month
You should
as
do
well.
Lunch in your office.
I know, I'll bring you lunch.
If there's anything else anybody wants to contribute, last call.
Speak now.
All right. I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 6:49.